Welcome, America East alums, to our virtual programming. We are joined with Erik Johnson from the Bullfinch Group. Really excited to dive into these sessions, providing you some professional development. We are going to look at how remote working will affect the job market and the job experience for individuals. So, Erik, first off, in March, tens of millions of workers suddenly had to go into remote working. Some have returned to the office, but some have not. Can you start by talking about this change and the immediate effects it has on workers?
Sure. So look, I'll start with our own firm as an example, and we can kind of go from there. For us, we're very fortunate to be in an industry where we were already working virtually in a lot of ways, as many different industries are. So again, our firm does financial planning for individuals, families, business owners. So as you can imagine, a lot of the advisors were already working through a screen share because just of location, right? They had clients that maybe were out of the area, or even just didn't want to drive across Boston, after work and things like that to meet with an advisor. What we had to change was hiring and training, which we were doing 100% in person, and now, for a while, been doing 100% virtually, and are starting to now work back into, okay, how do we figure out the best way to do things? Because look, I will tell you, from an interviewing standpoint, there's some beautiful efficiencies that we found on, hey, if I'm calling you, Jessica, and maybe you've applied for a position and we're having a good conversation, that we can literally jump on a screen share the next day, 45 minutes later, without scheduling a time when you can get off of work to be able to come in and all these things. And from a training standpoint, having people spread out. I mean, think about how difficult it was when somebody wasn't going to be able to make it to a training, and oh well, I've got this and I've got that, and we're running hybrid trainings now where some of the people are in person and some of the people are dialed in. And again, we're finding incredible synergy in using technology to be able to do these things. So, look, a lot of different industries are dealing with this differently. It's so dependent on who you are. But I will say that the biggest theme that I've heard in all my, again, across industries, just in my network, is that, hey, there were so many things that we didn't even know was an option to do differently that we're now figuring out. And some of it's an advantage, some of it's a disadvantage. And coming out of this, the key will be, how do we figure out how to do it the best way when we can actually choose to do it however we want?
The pandemic has affected many industries, some where working remote can be easily done and you can figure that out, others where it's a challenge. Can you talk about the different industries, how they may be affected? Maybe you have some examples of individuals who have been faced with hardships and how they creatively got over that to kind of continue in the situation that we're in.
Good. And I'm really glad you asked me that because, look, I think it's important to recognize how privileged someone like me who lives in a nice suburban area where I have space, I have an office, I have in my home. Um, I have the ability to, be able to work remotely, and I'm in an industry where I can. There are so many folks that their industry is being decimated by this, right? Is that just by the nature of what their business is? I think we started out this call that I happen to be lucky enough to be in an industry where we can thrive in the virtual world, and there are many industries that are actually doing better because everybody needs technology and those kinds of things. But look, on the other side of this coin, there are industries that are having to totally reinvent themselves. And the way I'm going to come at your question is, look, it is awful how much people have been affected. People in traditional blue collar jobs who cannot work remotely, people who are in home situations where they don't have the ability to do so. Um, but equally so, I am optimistic that those people are incredible people, that those industries and the leaders in and around those industries are going to find ways to reinvent restaurants and travel and hospitality and education, and some of those people that have been hardest hit by everything that we're doing is, look, I was visiting my daughter the other day at college, and we happened to be walking past a, uh, a a store that said furlough cheesecake. I said furlough, right? Like, and it looked like it had been there for, well, it was two women who were government workers who had been furloughed without pay for too long, and they said, look, we can't do this anymore, right? And so they created a cheesecake shop, And, and again, it was all branded with social justice issues and things like that. And look, we weren't even hungry. We had just eaten, we had just had dessert, but we went and bought cheesecake because, and there was a whole bunch of people in there going in for that exact reason, right? So again, I'm a big believer in the human spirit. And as awful as it is to see what some of these folks and some of these industries are going through, I believe we're going to find really, really good ways. We just need to remember, for those of us who have the privilege that I do, that a lot of my associates do, not to forget how lucky we are. And that has nothing to do with that I'm better than someone. It has everything to do with I'm very, very fortunate to be in the position I'm in. And what can we do to go out and help people? What can we do to go create situations where some of those folks have the ability and the time to be able to figure out and reinvent themselves in a lot of different ways. So again, I think it's something it's a really, really important topic. And again, the best companies are going to figure out ways to reach out beyond just their narrow scope and figure out how to be able to lift others up. And I think the best professionals are going to figure out the same kind of thing.
When this pandemic is over, there will be a lot of workers who continue to work from home as companies adjust to kind of that lifestyle. How do you think this will reshape the workforce?
Yeah, look, I think you're already seeing people are there's a lot of people who are loving it. There was an article in the Boston Globe today about people that spend 2+ hours a day commuting in the in the pre-COVID world, right? And they're going, hey, wait a second, I just got 10 hours a week back to either be better professionally, better personally, or some combination thereof. So I mean, look, I mean that's major, right? When you can decide, okay, how do I now live my life the best? So look, company culture is going to be certainly an issue. How we hold people accountable, how those conversations happen. Look, there's a lot of people that have had to learn how to be disciplined. There's a lot of people that learn how to balance. The whole idea of, well, when I go to work into my home office, there's no separation between what I do. And there's some people that are working more. Some people that they're stressed out because they're able to schedule a meeting every single hour or 30 minutes, whatever, and just jump on things. And there's zero time that they ever have to say, well, I'll grab lunch on my way from that person to that person or something like that. So look, that's certainly an issue. And on the other side of the coin, there's people that are struggling to be able to do things professionally because either they're just not wired in that way to be able to focus, or they've got things going on in their home. I mean, think about it. I'm very, very lucky that I have teenage daughters that are fairly self-sufficient. They can jump on a Zoom. They can log themselves in. They can wake themselves up. They can feed themselves lunch, right? So many colleagues of mine or just professional acquaintances of mine, they're dealing with second graders and fourth graders and toddlers and infants and both spouses trying to work. And so there's so many challenges that companies are going to have to start figuring out, how do we best support these people, right? How do we figure out? Right now, there's no choice, right? Everybody's just saying, hey, it is what it is. We're stuck doing it. Let's do the best we can. But moving forward, the key is going to be which companies are going to be able to figure out the best combination to allow people the flexibility and maximum efficiencies that works for their life and the company culture.
And as many of us are working from home and some have experienced kind of that lost connection with coworkers or noticed the change in their relationship with coworkers, you're not in the office day to day having that small talk about family, pets, life. So for those who feel lost in those connections with their coworkers, how can they stay connected in a virtual work environment?
So look, I've heard and read a lot of really different great advice. Certainly on the personal side, making sure that you take breaks, getting out of the house, going for a walk, take a call, on a walk. Making sure that you build some boundaries. I saw one article about a woman who's got a one bedroom apartments, and she works from one couch cushion and watches TV and hangs out on another couch cushion. And that's her border between her professional life and her personal life. And I was like, wow, right? For her, it's simply when I move to the other side of the couch, I'm not logged in anymore. So look, to answer your question more specifically about company culture, right? I think again, a lot of it's on the company side is how do we create atmosphere? How do we connect our people, right? So it's something I think of from a leadership standpoint all the time about being able to maybe even do some things outdoors where people can show up. Being able to have social events. And again, everybody's got Zoom fatigue. I mean, the fact I'm sure you were really excited to be on another Zoom with me today. But look, we created like a breakfast at Bullfinch, which has been wonderful. It's just 45 minutes where one of the senior folks gives some advice, best things I've learned. But the best part is the 5 minutes before in that beginning when everybody's just sort of logging on and saying hi, they get their cup of coffee. And what often happens is, there's some messages that are going around individually, or I'll get a text message, hey, saw you, I haven't talked to you for a while, right? And you'll just catch up with people. So again, companies trying to connect them. I mean, certainly people are doing virtual happy hours and those kinds of things. Even virtual events. We're doing a wine tasting event, later this week with, partly it's clients and some other people, but again, a lot of our people will be on there. So again, I've talked to a lot of different companies that are working on that. From an individual standpoint, it really is starting to take the initiative. Just being able to send out a text, call somebody up, say, hey, you got a couple minutes to catch up. Hey, we haven't chatted for a while. Because you're right, some of those things that used to happen organically at the water cooler or the lunchroom or in between, just walking through offices, aren't happening. So people have to be much more intentional, both on the employee side and on the company side.
So not that long ago, some may have experienced that when they shared with their coworker that they're going to work from home, they may have gotten an eyebrow raised look, and now maybe that coworker would have a different opinion of you telling them that they're working from home because of the circumstances that we're in. Since the pandemic has changed that, can you talk about some of the long-term effects jobs will face like this?
Yeah, look, I think there's no question that we're going to be in a hybrid environment where you're exactly right, Jessica. If I said, hey, I can't make it to Tuesday's meeting, and you would have said, all right, well, maybe you can dial in, and it would have been like, ooh, Erik's dialing in, and everybody else is in the room, and Erik, well, I don't know what he's got going on in his life. Maybe he's on vacation, or whatever it is, but he's on a phone. So I actually ran my first hybrid training class the other day, and I stole an idea. I have a daughter who's a freshman in college at the University of Maryland, and I asked her, I said, how are they doing your class when not everybody's in person? Because she's got one class that's in person, but not everybody's there. And she's got everybody logged in. The professor's got everybody logged in, even in the classroom, so that the person at home is still seeing everybody on their screen. So for the person at home, it's no different from if we were all at home, right? And for the people there, they're getting the best of both worlds. They're there, they can turn their heads and say, hey, hey, they can actually, the professor can look at people in the eye that's actually there, and she can look at the screen and talk to the whole class in general, right? So rather than someone feeling removed and I'm not there and I can't really see it, we're starting to see creating an environment where it's almost irrelevant, right, where you are, which I think is fascinating. The other part, Jessica, that this makes me think of is the whole idea of what's going to happen with where people live, right? Is it going to be less important for me to pay Boston housing prices because my work is in Boston, right? Is if I'm coming to the office less, or maybe even not at all, can I work from Boston and I live wherever I want, right? And for those people who are struggling with housing prices and things like that in LA or Chicago or New York, uh, you know, look, are they going to be able to go buy twice the home for half the price, and be able to maybe even use that money somewhat to travel a little bit? It's going to be really, really interesting how real estate will change. And I think there's going to be some far-reaching effects that I think will be positive. I'm really a believer that we're going to figure this stuff out. And we're going to learn, and we're going to grow, and we're going to be better coming out of this. And again, I'm fascinated at sort of what exactly that's going to look like.
The last question I have for you is experienced and inexperienced workers are obviously facing many changes. For example, the experienced workers coming in, having to adjust to working remote. Younger workers are trying to just start their job, and some of them are surrounded by nobody but themselves. So what advice do you have for those who are trying to adjust to the changes, and for those who are coming into a non-traditional workforce during a pandemic?
Sure. Wow, great questions, and one that every company leader is thinking about, right? So you're right. How do you teach an old dog new tricks, right? How do you teach someone that's been, hey, I come in and I commute and I sit at my desk and I don't leave the office until it's all done, right? And teach them to be able to use technology as a positive and not see it as this newfangled thing that's messing up our business or whatever, right? And figure out how to use it for good. I mean, look, like I say this all the time about a cell phone, right? Is that a cell phone can be an incredibly freeing tool, right? Is the fact that I don't have to sit at my desk waiting for you to call me. If you and I were scheduled for a 5 o'clock call and I was, and I was able to get out and go somewhere or whatever, I could take this call at the beach or at the tennis court or something like that if I needed to. Now, where it becomes a problem was when this owns me, right? And it's the comment I made earlier, right? Is that all I do is I'm locked to my cell phone all the time and I'm never away from it. That's a problem. So again, how do we use technology to make our lives better? So that's with the experienced workers. With the new people, right? Jessica, it is blowing our minds that we are working with people that we never met during the hiring process, right? Interviewed virtually 100% during the total shutdown, right? Hired, trained, right? And now we're bringing them into the office for like a socially distanced, 6 foot apart, conference room for a little bit of a half day thing. And it's literally the first time that we've seen each other face to face, right? And for them, they're thrilled to come in, see the beautiful office space, get to actually see some more people because they've heard all these names. They've heard us talking about, well, so and so does it this way, and you should talk to so and so. And it's someone on the other end of a line or the other end of a screen share. They don't have no idea how tall they are, right? They have no idea, just again what they're really like in person. And look, I think that's a challenge. And so we've had to really be intentional and talk to folks about how do you connect yourself, right? How do you make sure that you're doing everything you can? And again, it's truly a shared responsibility. The employees, the new hires, they need to be mature. They need to be able to be socially adept. They need to figure out how to do this. But the company has to be very, very aware of the challenges and can't just stick their head in the sand and assume that everything will be fine just because, oh, I did a training online the other day with them, they'll figure it out. That connection, that constant connection, again, has to be intentionally generated because it doesn't happen just organically anyway. So Jessica, look, I'm a big optimist that this is going to make us better. We are going to figure out more and more ways to be able to work, live, enjoy it. I think the best professionals are gonna be able to meld these worlds and find their way. And I think the best companies are going to do a really good job of using this as an advantage and then working together. So again, I truly believe that we're heading for something good. Nobody loves what we're doing. And look, Jessica, there, it's really, really, I think the probably the hardest thing for us to see is the gap widening with the people who can live the world that I'm talking about. There's so many different kinds of industries, jobs, workers that don't have the advantage of doing what I'm talking about, right? And their industry, I mean, I've got friends and former players and that are in the hospitality industry, that are in certain, blue collar, jobs that just are decimated. Their industry is being decimated, and they can't do their work from home. So look, everything we've talked about today is clearly siloed with a certain segment of society, and again, a large segment of society. And I think many of the America East alums that you're talking about are in that professional space. But we should never ever forget how blessed we are, how blessed I am to get to even have this conversation, to be able to have a computer screen, to be able to have a home where I can do this. Even though you probably heard people drilling in the background and somebody's fixing the basement, things like that. But look, we should never, walk away from the people who are not in a good situation. And we need to recognize that the gap is widening in this, and we need to find creative ways to bring it back because it does, look, we all matter, not just the people that have the kind of privilege that I do.
Thank you, Erik, so much for taking the time to speak with us on a great topic.
Thanks for having me.